Hello, welcome to Essence Educational GMAT Plus. I'm the tutor Zeyu. Today we will talk about one critical reasoning question. Unlike reading comprehension, where we start with the passage, in critical reasoning we should start with the question. Let's begin. The conclusion of the argument above depends on which of the following assumptions. So this is a question asking for assumption. You know what the question is asking for. So 90% of the GMAT questions are asking for weaken, support, assumption, or evaluation. So then, once I find out the type of the question, then I begin to read the paragraph. Read, understand the paragraph, and I try to find out the line of a reasoning of the author. The line of a reasonings. What is the line of a reasonings? It is a little bit abstract. Let me use this example to show you what exactly it means. Researchers have found that when very overweight people, who tend to have relatively low metabolic rates, lose weight primarily through dieting, then metabolism generally remain unchanged. So this sentence gives us a fact, a scientific fact, right? When overweight people, when they lose weight through dieting, their metabolic rate remain unchanged, still lower than the normal people. So you see here, I summarize with such a very simple notation. Metabolic rate of originally overweight people will be lower than the normal people. Let's continue. They will thirst, so please mark this word down. They will thirst, burn significantly fewer calories at the new weight than do people whose weight is normally at that level. So these people, you see, that's the second part. The calories they burn will be less than the normal people. So here, the first scientific fact is what we call an evidence or premise. And here is what we call, you see, the keyword is the thirst. This is indicating this is something called conclusion. This is called conclusion. The way from evidence to conclusion, and this is what we call a reasoning. Okay, this is called a reasoning. So this reasoning is a little bit like mathematical reasoning, right? So normally, by definition, your metabolic rate times your weight should give you the calories you burn, okay? Assuming that you are, you keep quiet. You don't do some exercises, okay? So here, metabolic rate times your weight, because your weight is the same now, the same as the normal people, and because your metabolic rate is lower, so you guys, those originally overweight people, will burn less calories. Okay, so this is the reasoning. This is a very special type of reasoning we call from cause to effect reasoning. This is the cause, and this is the effect. Okay, this is the cause, this is the effect. Let's continue. Such newly thin persons will, therefore, you see another keyword comes out. Therefore, this is indicating again another conclusion. These guys will therefore ultimately regain weight until their body size again matches their metabolic rate. Okay, you see, as I write here, they will regain weight. As the keyword therefore is telling you, this is another conclusion. You see, then the conclusion above becomes something called sub-conclusion, and this becomes the evidence for the second reasoning. And this is the conclusion for the second reasoning. This is the second reasoning, right? This is the first reasoning. And you see, this paragraph has two reasonings, and this is what we call the line of reasonings. Okay? I hope this is clear for you. In this line of reasoning, so we basically have two causal relationships from cause to effect, and this again becomes the cause, and here is the effect. Okay? So we have two cause and effect reasonings. So before we start to analyze this question and solve the problem, what is the assumption? Let me teach you something about the causal relationship. Causal relationship is super important in reality as well. The whole science, i.e. physics, chemistry, biology, and so on, are based on nothing but two things. One is simple induction. Another one is this one called causal relationship. So let me introduce you. We have two events, A and B. If the following three properties are satisfied, then we say there is a causal relationship between them. The first one, if A happens, B must happen. That's to say, if we have the cause, we must have the effect. Second one, if B happens, then A must have happened. Third one, as you see, the tense I'm using here is indicating the third one. A precedes B. A happens before B happens. When these three properties are satisfied, we call A the cause. We call B the effect. And the relationship between them is called causal relationship. Okay? So remember, in reality, we often have multiple factors, multiple causes influencing one effect. Reality is not like this, that simple, right? Reality is very much like this. For example, whether your business is successful or not depends on many factors. One of them is marketing, right? You have learned one marketing model. In marketing, we have something called 4P, right? Price, promotion, place, right, etc. So it depends on many factors. That's the reality. So one effect is dependent on many factors. So that's why causes are also, in logic, we call them factors. They mean exactly the same thing. So here, before we start to talk about what is the assumption, let's try to weaken this paragraph. You see, GMAT is a very well-designed exam. The so-called weaken for critical reasoning is basically what you do in the AWA, right? In AWA, you just try your best to weaken the answer. Here is exactly the same. How do you want to weaken the answer? If I ask you to write an AWA, what are you going to do? So let me show you one of the very important ways to weaken from cause to effect reasoning. Remember, there are many factors that are influencing the result, right? For example, I say y is equal to x1 plus x2. You do a reasoning. x1 is increasing, then y is increasing. How do I weaken you? I say another factor in the C, in this case x2, okay, tends to make your result, your conclusion, not happening. Okay, so therefore I say when x2 is decreasing, then y may be unchanged, maybe even decreasing, right? So x2 is decreasing, is weaken your argument, your reasoning. So if I summarize this by using a formula, is C leads to not B. C leads to not B. Another factor leads to B is your conclusion, leads to not your conclusion, make your conclusion, prevent your conclusion from happening, okay? Then this is called one way to weaken. This is one of the ways to weaken from cause to effect reasoning. Okay, so therefore, coming back to our example, how do we weaken this one? Whether you regain weight, ask yourself one very important question. It is the same in GMAT. It is the same in reality as well. Ask yourself one critical question. It depends on what? It depends on what? Like here, whether you regain weight depends on what? Only on the calories you burn, but also on the calories you consume. Exactly. So the calories you consume minus the calories you burn, right? If this number is positive, you are going to gain weight. If this number is negative, you are going to lose weight, right? How to weaken? By using our formula, you say the calories this guy consume will be much less than the normal people. Agree? Just like this example. They will be much less than the normal people. So therefore, they may not regain weight. Here we are. So this is how we weaken this. The calories they consume, those overweight people, will be way less than the calorie consumed by the normal people. So they may not regain weight. This is how we weaken this. So with all this preparation, we can finally come back to say, what is the assumption? What is the assumption? Take a look at its definition. Assumption is a stated premise, so unstated premise. So basically, it's not explicitly mentioned like this one by the author. It's not mentioned, okay, unstated premise, such that when you negate it, okay, when we put a not into it, okay, this is our first example, so we understand it easily, just like when you put not into the sentence, called we negate it. It becomes weakening. If we negate it, it becomes weakening, then this choice becomes the assumption. If we find one choice, after negation, it becomes weakening, then that is the assumption. So with this definition, let's take a look at choice A. Relatively few very overweight people who have dieted down to a new weight tend to continue to consume substantially fewer calories than to people whose normal weight is at that level. Okay, if you put a not into the sentence, then you negate it. Okay, take a look. Not few. Few means already not. Not. Negative is positive. So it becomes many. After negation, it actually means what? Many overweight people will continue to consume substantially fewer calories than do normal people. That's exactly the weakening I just talked about. Agree? So that is why A, after negation, it becomes weakening. So the original choice, A itself, is the assumption by definition. So this one, we choose A. We don't even need to bother to read the rest of the choices. Okay? I hope this question gives you an idea of how I solve one critical reasoning questions. Then, let's summarize a little bit. Okay? So how do you conquer? When I use the word conquer, I mean you solve 100% of critical reasoning questions in the GMAT. How do you do so? First, you must know all the related logical knowledge like causal relationship. Okay? Then you should be able to read, understand it, and find out the line of a reasoning of the author like this one. And you know this is from cause to effect reasoning. You know even the type of the reasoning the author uses. Okay? Then, for each type of a reasoning, we have the concrete formula, like this one, for weaken, and therefore for assumption, for support. Okay? And then you apply the formula, you will get 100% of the critical reasoning questions correctly. This is how you should get a high score in the GMAT. Now, we come back. Our course is called GMAT Plus, right? So, this is not yet for us. Now let's go one step beyond to the reality. In reality, it is also important for you to continuously ask what are the assumptions. Let me give you one example. In reality, there is something called a status quo. What is status quo? Let's say you have a problem. The first guy comes and he proposes one solution. And then the other people start to imitate this guy. And later on, you find everyone starts to solve this problem by using this concrete approach. This approach is called status quo. For example, use mass production to produce cars. That's a status quo. What you should do, especially if you want to be very successful, you have to continuously ask for the assumptions behind the status quo. Are these assumptions true? Can I change it? Okay? Once you propose a new way of solving the problem, such as JIT manufacturing, then you challenge the status quo. And this disruptive new approach you introduced will help you to become super successful. Let me give you a concrete example in reality in finance. Okay? I think everyone who learns a little bit of finance must have heard of the model CAPM, CAPM model. So basically, I can tell you this model works terribly in reality. And one professor from UChicago, whose name is Eugene Farmer, challenged the assumptions of this model. And he proposed something called three-factor model. And one of his PhD students, whose name is Booth, started a company using his professor's model, three-factor model. And this company later on helped him to earn a lot of money. And then he donated a lot of money back to UChicago. And that's why today's the graduate school of business in UChicago is called Booth School of Business. That's the story behind. So I give you a very good chance. So even the three-factor model can still not explain Warren Buffett's performance in the past 3 decades. Okay? So if you can initiate a new model, let's call it six-factor model, if you can explain Warren Buffett's performance, And then you have two great outcomes waiting for you. One, you have a high chance to win another Nobel Prize. Second, you have a high chance to become the next billionaire. So let me end today's example class with this story in reality. That is how you should learn GMAT. Okay? First, to get a very high score in the GMAT, at least 700. And then you apply the knowledge in logic to reality. And that helps you to become successful in the long run. Thank you very much.